Alrighty, welcome to Romera Records virtual cast. Today we have on Stephen Morgan. How's it going?
I'm good, Jackson. How are you? I'm really impressed with your sound setup in the background too. You've got some serious audio. What is it? That's the soundproofing, right? That you got on the walls.
Yeah, so on the back side, for the left and right side, I've actually got these two. They're just like sound blankets, and I think that I got them off Amazon. They're like $100, and they're pretty tall. And then everything else is actually really just for aesthetics. Like they're everybody.
Ah,
Oh,
nice.
oh man, these like soundproofing like things. I'm like, not really. I mean, they can deflect
Yeah, it's
sound.
like they may do some of that, but look, it's just because it looks cool, man.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I was doing.
that's it. That's it. That's the priority. Then, like, if it, yeah, anything else it does is just a happy coincidence. Oh,
Exactly.
yeah. Yeah, unlike me, recently moved home, so it's been a bit chaotic lately. But I've got like wooden floors, everything around me. I might as well be in a church with the soundproofing I've got in here right now.
You got that church reverb going on.
Yeah, exactly. Hallelujah. This is this is a very different vibe than I'm usually going for.
Yeah, so you were just telling me that you do like comedy and you said you do music too?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, I music is kind of like my thing, like from all my life, like since being a kid, and just absolutely obsessing over different music and making it as well. But in the last 10 years or so, I got into comedy as well. I mean, I say got it, the last 10 years ago. It like actually did it as far as performing, as far as stand up and improv and everything. I used to be that wise ass who was like, yeah, I'm funny, I just never got around to proving it in any way yet. But no, it's fun. It's also like a weird time in general because I'm now starting to perform again and getting used to it, and it's like over Christmas when you eat too much and you don't do any exercise and you feel like the pain of it in January. It's like that, but it's been 2 years of pandemic, so I'm very much like, okay, so how the hell does any of this go again?
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm actually in the music business, and I think it's
Ah,
so interesting how I would guess just like how much people who are actually in like artists themselves don't know about the industry, and it's I would say sad because a lot of times that's how artists get taken advantage of is because labels know way more than they do, and so
right.
they're just kind of out there saying help. I don't really know much, so y'all take care of my stuff and then get it
That's
done.
it. Yeah, that's it. I mean, like, an artist by their nature is not someone who is naturally going to be great at business, accounting, and, law, which is essentially what the music industry and lots of other industries boil down to, really. And, they are industries. So it's like they are designed to get the most out of someone in that sort of way. I mean, we've had shifts in the last, decade or so with the move to mostly streaming and also well, a lot more online nowadays, but like it hasn't necessarily made things better, it's made things different. I mean, some things have improved, but yeah, it's kind of like that on top of pandemic has just made things really hard, I think, for people in the arts industry in general.
Yeah, and I am a huge proponent for education as far as like, making sure people know, what they're doing and making sure they do it right because
Hmm.
it's very imperative that when people are able to, communicate with other people and know the lingo, it just makes everything better. Like, so a lot of times
Yeah,
I might be recording an artist or in the studio with one of the other engineers I work with, and the artist will be trying to describe like, "Hey man, can you do blah blah blah?" And it's like he
right.
doesn't really know what he's talking about, but geez, so if they only, just knew certain things, then it would help out that communication and get rid of that, I guess that problem with knowing like what
Yeah.
what they're trying to do, so we can have a great production for the music.
Right, because it becomes like a common language then, right? Because if you don't have that foundation, then you really aren't speaking the same language, and you're doing a thing where you're like, okay, so you want it more like bouncy and and now I've got to work out that word and those two noises and what the hell they mean. Okay, okay. So now I'm going to spend like, like 30 minutes. I'm just going to try something, see if it's what you mean. And then you're going to hear it and go, no, 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 that's what are you doing? That's not what I mean. It's true. I think that like learning, especially, because the thing is none of us really know very much about anything at all, really,
Yeah,
when it comes
yeah.
down to it. So it's really good. I love it when if we ever record in studio, because I do a lot of home recording now, and there's a lot of self learning of like, this is like someone who's doing this as a profession. I want to kind of tap into their brain. I want to ask them those questions, which, it's like, hey, I've been doing this and I find this bit really hard. And always it's just kind of like, oh yeah, that's not how you do it, dude. That's, you have been doing it the whole time. And like very quickly can tell me and work out what it is. But that's because I've at least got the foundation of what it is that I'm asking. He can very quickly hear it and go, oh yeah, I see what this guy doesn't know, rather than it being like so vague and so difficult. And also I think it's a love thing, right? Because I love music. I want to know more about production. I want to know more about everything. I want to get to know everything around the edges, not necessarily because I want to be an expert or at it or even find it all interesting, but it's important. It's your world.
Yeah, and like also there's just the aspect of slang. So I live in Memphis, Tennessee, and the artists here just have certain words that they use, and they say stuff a certain way. So even if you were like some top level producer or engineer, you still might have
Yeah,
a hard time working with them because you don't understand the lingo. And if you're somebody who's
right.
just been working in Memphis for a such and such amount of time, then you might be much better working with people from here just because you know the lingo. So that's one crazy thing I love about music is no matter how successful you've been in the past, you might not be that successful working with a certain group of people just because you aren't familiar with them. It's kind of like, hey, you're not members only, that type
Right,
type
right.
of thing.
That's it. I mean, it's like whenever you see these collaborations of like artists who are coming from completely different backgrounds, and the majority of the time, it's like it's just a car crash. It's not great, it's ended. But there are the odd occasions when you get two different artists, two different genres or something, or not even maybe. I mean, like I'm just thinking of Moderat in Germany. They're like amazing as mode selector and apparat. And there are those few instances where you're like, damn, they found that way to communicate, because it's a lot. I mean, I always think of making music a lot like how dating is. I always draw parallels when I'm talking to people who don't necessarily have that thing. And I'm always like, if you're collaborating with someone, the first thing you want to do is you need that first date. You need to sort of get the feeling. Can we even possibly like just get into each other's heads in any sort of way? Can we sort of like find a way to just make something? And whether that's because we're antagonizing each other or whether that's because we're just like getting on really well, but is there some sort of spark there? But it's a sort of thing which you don't really know it until you do something. You put yourself with someone, you put yourself out there. I don't know, it's a really interesting subject, I think.
Yeah, and some of my favorite types of genre collaborations are usually, I'm huge into hip hop and rap. So like seeing stuff from back in the day with what was it, Run DMC and who was it that they collab
But
with?
the Aerosmith one.
Oh, Aerosmith. And then
Yeah, yeah.
not recent, but it was years ago. Do you remember when it was a rap group called Dim Franchise Boys? They did a collab with Korn. And
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Korn's song was called shoot, what was the name of that song? Um, Coming Undone with it. And then the Dim Franchise Boys, their song was called Lean With It, Rock With It. And they basically merged the two songs together. It was pretty neat.
Okay.
And then who else has done a rock rap collaboration? There's been
But
a good bit.
I mean, there's a lot of rock rap collaboration, but then that can go that then ended up creating new metal, which was an abomination. So
Mm.
you can go too far.
Yeah, yeah.
It can go too far.
I mean, we even had like the rap and country, and some people were calling it
Oh
crap,
yeah.
country rap.
Right, right. Yeah, exactly. Like you get that. I mean, like nowadays, like genres just bleed into each other so much more
Yeah,
than ever before, right?
yeah,
Because it's like, you can just so easily make stuff and play around with, some sort of production tools and just like go, hey, what would this sound like if it was mixed with this? And suddenly the bridge is going to be country sort of flavored. And it's just like, yeah, why not? If it doesn't work, well, just delete it and no one ever has to know. But
yeah.
give it a try.
Well, a big controversy came out of the Lil Nas X situation with
Right.
him and his song "Old
Crazy
Town
amazing.
Road," because
Yeah.
they were trying to push that as a country song, and then the CMAs, the Country Music Awards, were like, "No, this isn't country." I mean, they took it down. It was like #1 on the country charts, and they took it
Right.
down. Was like, "Nope, this isn't country. We're not going to accept this." I was like, "Man,"
Yeah.
and then freaking
Mm.
what's his name? Billy Ray Cyrus. He got on the remix, and then they did a collaboration with that. So I don't know. It's really fun seeing people be creative and express themselves through music and be like, hey, we don't care what, how it is or whatever. We just want to put this out there and let people love it.
That's true. I mean, I think that was like, I mean, that was so cool with Lil Nas X with that collaboration as well, and what he's done since, because I think it's like there are certain genres where like people do not like change. It's like, this,
Yeah.
and country is definitely high up on that list of ones where there's certain rules. This is how things have to be. If they're not like this, then go to hell. And I can't say I'm that familiar with it. Country is not such a big thing in Europe. But at the same time, just seeing it all remotely, seeing how much Lil Nas X was just fucking with people, and then actually like turning out to be a really cool guy who put out not all to my taste, like of his newer music, but like I still do really like some of it, and still think the guy is hugely talented. And just, I don't know, something about that kind of clash of culture, to me, I was just like, yeah, get in people's faces. This is really good. And, it also kind of highlights the like prejudices in people as well, behind who are just finding reasons to say that it's not country music, or finding reasons to say that this is not good enough or legitimate. And like you say with Billy Ray Cyrus, it's like, yeah, you know what? Why really is that? That's the question people need to ask.
Yeah, and music sometimes can get political with some people, especially like award shows. Those get pretty strange, and rightfully so. I guess people who have been running the music industry for a while probably control what happens at award shows. But I think the true winner when it comes to music and being creative is the consumer, the audience, because we
Yeah.
get to experience people's creative sides, and when we have artists out there who are rule breakers and they just want to do whatever they want to do, that's when it gets fun and gets interesting. And
Yeah.
I love people um, who just go out of their boundaries and do different things, do kind of different collabs, because that
Yeah.
shows how creative they can be. It shows their limits are limitless, and they can get out there and do whatever they want to do. Um,
Yeah,
I was actually going
absolutely.
to ask, like, what kind of genres have you messed around with and been able to create music?
Right. I mean, like it's mostly been sort of rock, indie, electronic kind of things, depending on that's kind of like my probably the music I listen to the most. But also, it's just it's one of those things that when I was a teenager, I was really like a lot more into rock. Then I kind of got more into other genres, yeah, indie, a lot more pop as well, actually, hip hop. And it was just I kind of, well, I mean, I always feel stupid talking about genres because fundamentally, I was just more like I was into rock when I was a teenager, and then I was into everything else when I got a bit older.
Hmm.
Suddenly it wasn't like, oh, I can't listen to this because of whatever reason. It was no longer a I can't listen to this. It's just like, oh, I either like it or I don't.
Hmm.
Just those are the two genres.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, as far as the actual music making goes, I guess, because rock was such a big thing as being a teenager, it's like it's part of my sort of language of approaching songwriting. Because when I was first learning to play instruments, it was always like what would be coming to mind. But then the electronic side of things, and I've gotten a lot more into production in the last like quite a few years now, is because that realization that there's things you can do from like manipulating sounds from different waveforms synthesized and things like this is almost limitless, and that suddenly you just have this like wealth of like sounds and things that you can do which you could never even dream of just doing on an electric guitar. I mean, I know you can like get pedals and things like this to shift things around, but I'm like literally just can be playing around with like just with like a laptop and like mouse, and I can be making like crazy different sounds. And then that in turn makes you think, oh man, imagine if this went in that direction. And then you spend a few hours doing that, and then after those few hours you go, oh no, that was a really bad idea, but you still had fun doing it. You explored that idea. And yeah, that to me is like so exciting because there are just so many possibilities.
And yeah, and like what you were just saying, I was talking to somebody about, the correlation between science and music, and it just being an art, differentiating the art and science part of music, because there's so many um correlations between the two. And I was just explaining like hertz. We look at when we are EQing our music, you can see the waveforms, and if you can manipulate how many hertz are going through things, and that's art of the sound that we want to hear. But then that's also science. Like that's why they call it an
Yeah,
audio engineer, is because they are using technology to change the way you are perceiving the sound. And I don't
yeah,
think a lot of people understand how much, I guess, just like technology and science that you can know to make you really good at music. Like you could probably take somebody who understands like frequencies and stuff like that, and they could become a really good musician, producer, or engineer just because they have
yeah,
that knowledge, which is what AI is turning into. Like we've got these
right.
plugins like Isotope. Have you ever used their stuff?
Yeah, I've used that. Yeah, oh my god, yeah, that's my first bounce that I'll ever do of a track. I'm like putting isotope on for yeah, ozone, just just
Yeah,
some
yeah.
auto mastering, and I'm like, huh, it sounds good now.
Yeah, like for everybody listening, Isotope is a company who they've been developing some pretty cool stuff as far as automation of just letting your technology of your computer, your software, just cultivate your music and be able to just make it, as you were saying, just make it sound good, master it for you without you having to do anything. Sometimes does it
Yeah,
suck? Yes. Sometimes it's just not good. I've let it master one of my songs for me and it sounded awful, but there are times where it just does what it's supposed to do. It does a good job. And do I think that that's going to take over eventually? No, because I still think you need a human aspect to get certain sounds that you want. But it is making it very easy for beginners to jump into
yeah,
the music realm to
that's it.
to do good music.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's and it's like the parallel you gave with art as well. I always think it's like, an artist needs to learn how to paint and needs to learn certain things to be able to produce the thing that's in their head or their imagination or their idea. And it's the same with music and with things like isotope. It's very much, it's kind of like what I love about it is the fact that you can just use different settings to hear what the thing that you're working on sounds like in different ways, like instantly. And it's not that then you will get the perfect master out of it. It's not like then once you've seen you've done that, you're like, job done. But you can like, I can literally like go, okay, what would this sound like if I'm pushing the treble up like super high in this part of the song? And I'm doing it. And I'm like, okay, that was a good or a bad idea. and then that can give you ideas to change, well, to either on how you would master it, but also how you would change the song as well. It's the fact that you, yeah, it's you could, in other words, you can stop at the presets,
Yeah.
or you can use them to kind of like go, maybe I could use something a bit more like this.
Yeah, and I think that's where, your creativity begins is after those, after those preset, you throw that in and it's like, all right, where do I go from here? Because some people might
Yeah.
use that as the stopping point, right? So if they've got,
Right.
you know who like Chris Lord Alge is? He's like a famous audio engineer.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they might use his preset on drums. Maybe it's like a kick drum or a snare, and then they're like, "All right, I'm
Yeah.
done." Or you could tweak some things, and that might just be your base starting point instead of your I'm done point.
Yeah, yeah, so true. And also, I find as well, especially if it's some sort of sound effect or a synth sound or things like this, if you hear someone using one of the defaults or one of the out of the box things, it's so distracting and it can like make you lose so much respect. Like do you know Run the Jewels
Yes. Oh my
LP?
God,
And
I love
yeah,
this
so
stuff.
absolutely incredible. I've met Killer Mike, and it's like
Oh,
brilliant. Yeah, well, back when he was doing RAP music, he played in a tiny little basement in London when I was living there, and that was very cool. He's there with his partner, but yeah, it was just like it was such an amazing act. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to. I'm not trying to shit on them, but in the first mixtape, there is this one sound that LP did used on the production, and I'm like, that is one of the default sounds on my native machine. When I'm messing around, I hit that one because it sounds quite cool,
uh,
and it's like it's part of the core beat. And every time I hear that song, I'm always like, oh man, just change like something just a little bit on it. Come on, man. It's my brain can't hear anything else, and it's always like going, there it is. There it is.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, sometimes when you have that thought process, you're just hoping that somebody is thinking the same thing that you're thinking when it comes to creating music, and sometimes people aren't. And what might seem so obvious to you might not be obvious to other people, and so that might have been what he was hoping. You know what I mean? Like he might have been
Yeah,
hoping
true.
that nobody knows where that sound came from, and I would say the majority of
Yeah.
people don't. But
True. Yeah. I mean, it might just be one of those things. Because I mean, I definitely don't think that LP is the sort of producer who's cutting corners. So I did just think it was such a surprise. But
yeah.
yeah, I don't want to knock him. But I'm actually about to start a new musical project next week. Actually, it's funny. It's someone because now I've moved to Utrecht in the Netherlands where I live, and someone who I used to jam with had moved here, and she's like, "Oh, we've got this band, that we're doing okay." Was one of the members left because things were getting too serious. And it's like, do you want to see if you fit in as like a guitarist or something? So I'm doing that now next week. And it's been a while since I've done something new and more serious that's not just me on my own. And it's kind of funny because it's like going back to that whole thing about the first date and everything. In my head, I'm kind of like, they've sent me some demos, the sorts of things that they're putting together. And it's amazing how you get like, just, I've got this like nerves, like this little thing. I keep listening back to the demos and I'm kind of like going, I like that bit. I don't, production, no. And then my head's going like, oh, is this the kind of music that I want to make? Would I be okay with this?
Mm.
What could I add to this? Is this even the sort of stuff that I can vibe with? And it's amazing how much, you can kind of like overthink these things. But at the same time, as soon as you get there, all of these things I've thought, I guarantee you within a minute of being there, I'll kind of have that feeling of like, yeah, I can gel with these people or not. It's,
Yeah, I recently was listening to a podcast, and there's a guy. He does something different. He is a specialist in pre-production. So usually we know people for being a
hmm,
specialist in post-production, but he's a
yeah,
specialist in pre-production, and it's everything you were just talking about, where he basically helps people understand, like, what are you trying to accomplish, like what do you want this song to sound like or this album to sound like, and then he breaks down, like, what engineer should you be using, if you are a huge like heavy metal person, you're not going to go to somebody who's been engineering for Ariana Grande or or
Yeah.
a big rap artist or something. You're going to go to the best in heavy metal, or somebody who does that kind of stuff, because you want somebody to be familiar with the things, that the sounds and the things you want to do. So yeah, he was big in a pre-production to make sure that, is this even a fit, that type of thing.
Yeah. That's a really, yeah, it's a really interesting thing because it, now you say it, it feels quite an obvious sort of thing that's missing from that whole chain of like someone's idea to something being finished and done. But it's yeah, it's an interesting concept because I guess there's a lot of, you're almost like overlapping with being a songwriter, right? Because you are contributing to the core of whatever it is that the sound is. And you may have ideas of like, you guys say you want to sound like this, but right now that's not what I'm hearing. Or I mean, I'm only imagining what this role is like, but I could imagine it being a really interesting thing. And because yeah, because it's always about the whole having other people's input, and people who know what they're talking about can be like so valuable to like the songwriting and production process, as long as it's the right person.
And that last bit that you were saying, he was telling a story where he was like, yeah, I was in the studio. I think he said he had his wife in there with him, and they had a band, and they were playing, like, I guess it was a demo for him.
Yeah.
And when the song was over, he was like, oh man, that sucked. And he said his wife just like gave him a look like, what are you doing right now? But
Oh
he
man.
said that's when he found out that he was horrible with communicating with people. And
Oh
that
man.
is a skill that you need in the studio, especially with music, because music is like somebody's baby. If you tell
That's
them
so
that,
true.
you
Yeah.
telling somebody their music sucks is like telling their baby's ugly. Like,
That's it.
like you need to
That is so true.
handle with kid gloves when it comes to people's music. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
another part of it, is just communicating with people, and being able to go, that's not ideally what this should sound like, but this is where we can go
Yeah.
with this.
That's it. It's like I've had a, we had like the band that I was in for the longest, this band Neon High Wire, making kind of electronic music. Our first EP, we had it mastered at the Exchange in London, and we were really excited about it. They've done a lot of like big name, sort of well, they've mastered a lot of stuff that we were really respected and really liked, and we were like, oh, we finally got the EP ready. And when the guy was actually mastering it, and we were like, yeah, can we sit in? He's like, I can do this all remotely. And we're like, yeah, we know, but we want to see you do it because we want to learn. And he's like, yeah, okay, there's a couch over there, yeah, go ahead. And he's just like, he's had the first listen through, he's played around with some levels, he's just having a look through, and he just like turns his chair to us and he's trying to explain, because we'd asked him to, like, what do you make of the mix? What do you make of the production? What do you think? What, just give it to us straight. And all the whole time that he's telling us what he thinks about the music that we've made, that we've spent like years putting, like working on, reworking, cutting songs, adding songs, just like heated, getting passionate about, kind of arguing, getting to that point where we thought it's ready. And he keeps telling us about like, it's really dull. It's
Mm.
really dull. The thing is, it's like the sound you got there is just like this, there's a lot of dullness in there. And like, we're British, so we kind of like go, okay, I'm not going to say anything, but I'm actually mortally hurt inside because he keeps calling our music dull. But I'm sure he's a professional and this is just fine, and we need to be stronger about this. And then after a while, like, and we're just all like looking worse and worse as every time he says the word dull, because he's like, yeah, so this part particularly dull, this part. And we're like, okay, that's my favorite bit of the song, but yeah, carry on, he's a professional. And he then has to be the one who kind of like goes, oh yeah, you know what I mean when I say dull, right? And we're like, yes, we do. So of course we're like, yeah, okay, stop rubbing it in our faces. And he's kind of just explaining like, this is a technical term for like the audio frequency, that like I'm saying that there's this like some parts missing here. And we were like, oh, okay, yeah, it is pretty dull now you mention it, yeah. Oh man, but that's the thing though, it's like to him, he's just saying these words. But to us at that time, it was just kind of like, we spent 5 minutes just like you're having our entire confidence stripped away and just all self-control, just going like, we make dull music, man. We make the dullest music ever made.
Yeah, and to be able to communicate with people that language, as we were talking about earlier, it can be difficult because sometimes people, again, they might not understand it and they might take it their own way, and
Yeah.
it's something that you have to fully understand it to be able to communicate it. I always tell
Yeah.
people, if there's something I don't know and I'm trying to inquire about it, I'll say, explain this to me like I'm a fifth grader. Because if you can do that,
Right.
then I know you actually know what you're talking about. Because if you can't explain it to me like a fifth grader, then don't even bother trying
Yeah.
to.
It's a good lesson for everything in life. I think that one's like, look, just take away all this bullshit that you've piled up in your head. Just explain, I'm a child, you
Yeah.
just got to give me all the information in a really simple way, and then we can talk.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say for people to be able to do that, and it kind of brings you down to the same level, so that you all all the ego goes out the window, and you just all feel
Yeah,
humble, and you're like, all right, let's take this music in for what it is, and let's not
yeah,
you with your music that y'all were doing, y'all probably were like, all right, this is it, this is our this is our baby, this is our
yeah,
golden child of music, and
yeah.
then for him to just say it's dull, you're like, what were we doing? Like that we suck at.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's a difficult one, that I think in general as well, because like I'm too sensitive. I can take these criticisms. This sort of stuff can like absolutely destroy my enthusiasm for something that I'm working on. I wish it didn't have so much control over me, but it really does. And one of the things that I often have to do, and I learned this many times the hard way, whether it's music, whether it's comedy, whatever it is that when I have an idea or something, when you first have that spark about something, which in your brain is like, holy shit, this is exciting. This is a great idea. Oh my God, imagine you got this. And there's all that activity going on in your head because you're like, all these possibilities. And it's just like, you feel like you're in your creative zone. You really got it going. And you're like, okay, I need to find a way to kind of express this. And you might say, spend a couple hours, you might be recording something, writing something down. You're just trying to put like the skeleton together. You're just trying to put something out there, because you know that if you don't do that, then in 3 hours' time, you'll be like, I have no idea what I was doing, how we're talking about. And so you do that. And then is that always that temptation at that point, because you are currently like loving this idea so much, you think like, my, if people knew this idea existed, then I think that, maybe it would change their outlook on life. Maybe they would be thinking about things in a different way. And then you go to someone and you say like, oh, look at this. I'm just so excited. Just like I'll show you a little bit of it, but it's very early. And you show them that thing, and then they're kind of like, huh, yeah, yeah, I guess it could be, yeah. And you're just like, oh, no, no, no. You're
Yeah.
right. It's a stupid idea. If someone's done this before, I was thinking, why did I think this was good? And it's just like that. There's always that temptation to want to share that spark. But yeah, you've got to kind of protect yourself and protect your idea, and also give people some slack too, because it's not the person's fault. You probably have brought them something half baked, and it may be good in the future. But like when you try to show someone something, they guaranteed will feel awkward as hell and have a lot of expectations on what their reactions are supposed to be. So it'll always be a bit like, yay.
So, how do you feel with releasing music? Are you the type of person who ends up holding on to music for a while until you've got to perfect it, or are you just kind of, all right, I think it's done, let's just release it, and then we're going to go on to the next song?
Both of those things, basically, because yeah, I've got a lot of almost done things. And also I find if I haven't finished something and after a certain amount of time, it's either never going to get done, or it's, it'll take forever. But I do like to really sort of push to get something done as quickly as possible before I get bored of it. because otherwise, yeah, that's then becomes like more of a chore than something that you want to work on. But once something is done, and whether that's something which is like, oh, I've reworked this 50 times and it's like this perfectly sculpted thing, or whether that's something that's like, this was always supposed to sound a bit thrashy, and kind of like loose around the edges, and that's part of the charm. I just want to then instantly forget it. I gotta kind of, because I feel like as soon as you've actually produced something, then it's no longer yours. It's like it exists, it's a thing, it's finished. And at that point there, it's like it's very easy to take personally the praise and the criticism that you will get for it. And neither of those things really help, you know? I mean, like constructive criticism helps. So if there's something about, like, I don't know, someone who gets you and can tell you those sorts of things, then maybe that can help in a more generalized sense. But in general, it's like, look, you've finished this thing. You had this idea, you brought it to completion. It's done with now. You'll never think it's perfect because, it's like everything has to end at some point and you'll always have what ifs in your head. But you have to start thinking about the next thing. Otherwise, yeah, you just become a bit sort of lazy and you just get stuck in the past. You've always got to be thinking about what else can I do? And yeah, that's how I kind of think about those things.
Is there something that you feel like you haven't done in music that you really want to get into? You've got this itch that you haven't scratched yet.
Absolutely. It's funny. One thing which, especially in the last few years, because I've been doing a lot more stuff on my own, is that I really want to do like to really throw myself into kind of like a live instrumentation, but like to really incorporate a lot of the electronic stuff that I'm doing in a way that you can translate it on stage, but not in a way that you've got some sort of backing track or something like that, but in a way where it's like, here, you've got your layout. I've got my machine, I've got my synths, I've got my, like, the laptop with my DAW, I've got everything laid out. And it's like, okay, I'm playing guitar for this bit. And like, if I feel like there's some sort of improvisation that I want to do that's going to come into this thing, I want to have it in my head that I can switch to that, rely on it, know that I've got that sound, know that I've got it already, that I can just go with it. And that is something which, I feel like there would be so much freedom in that, like so much power as well to like change something so radically, because, like you can, with these instruments, you can make so many different sounds. And I've always tried to get to that point, but I've always been a bit like, when what's ended up happening is you get on stage, you try to set everything up like you have it at home or in your studio or whatever, and suddenly it's like, okay, there's no audio, or like, hey, this is crashing all the time,
Mm.
or this cable no longer works, and you're a bit nervous about getting everything right anyway, and you're just like, oh man, why do I do this to myself? Why do I complicate things so much, when really, if I just kept it simple, then, I could, if I just electric guitar, distortion pedal, we're done, we can go home.
Mm.
But I just wish that to have that sort of setup where it's like, let's just explore, let's be able to create that sort of thing. And that's where I'm going with this new project now, because I want to try and find a way to keep it simple enough that I can do it anyway, but complicated enough that I can do a lot of cool things with it.
Yeah, I think music and just the tools can be like a vehicle. Like you can, if you have a car and you also want a motorcycle, that's, like having one microphone then having another microphone. They both accomplish the same thing, but you might
Yeah.
use one more than the other. You might use one just to experiment, just to drive around, you know what I mean? Like there's
Yeah.
just so many things that you are able to do with musical instruments. I was, again, I love listening to podcasts, but I was listening to another podcast about a guy who he was an audio engineer and he would break all the rules of like how to record stuff. Like they were saying, instead of recording a violin from 10 feet away in the air, like most people
Yeah.
do it, he was like, what's wrong with putting this 2 feet away? Or, why record the horns from 5 feet away? Let's put a horn literally right there on the horn. And is those kind of people who make music come to life, because it feels a little dead if everybody's doing the same thing, everybody's using the same microphone, same signal chain. But those people
Yeah.
who, hey, don't look at the levels. If we're in the red, we're in the red. We'll worry about it later. If it sounds good, that's the mission, right? Just let's
Yeah.
do whatever and just make it sound good, and we're done.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that I love as well is like whenever I'm playing with something new, whatever it is, if it's playing an instrument I've never played before, or yeah, something new that I'm just trying out that I haven't done before. There's this sort of spark of creativity I get in my brain that I don't get when I play around with the stuff that I've been doing the same way again and again for so long. And it's funny when you mentioned that about the recording and the violin, the brass, it's like it may not even be, it may not even result in like a huge difference, right? It may be a subtle difference. It may, I mean, I have no idea how much of a difference that would make to the end sound, but it would be enough that the person who's playing that instrument may kind of like get this feeling of like, okay, I've noticed that when you're recording from there, that pick up on this certain, like, I don't know, resonance on this particular note. And then I can sort of play with that as a something that I would not normally have noticed or done anything with. And then their brain sort of plays around with it, and then they play with an idea that goes with it. And suddenly they're like, huh, I've got this new thing that I can do with what I've already been so familiar with. And I love that sort of thing. I love like when, you know, you just get artists who are like, okay, we're great at this. Let's throw away everything we know and let's start again with a whole different style. Because it just like it opens up so many other possibilities, and like and your imagination just goes crazy. And I think it's, I don't think I'm alone in this this way of like coming to creativity.
So I also want to get into some of your comedic acts. What all do you
Yeah.
do with comedy? I think you do some improv, right? And what else do you do?
Yeah, so yeah, so I do stand up improv. I'm with a group in Amsterdam here in the Netherlands. We sort of teach and perform every week and run workshops and things like that. And that's some yes, mostly improvised. And so that, you know, I really enjoy that. You know, with everything that I do, including music, I'm much more comfortable in a setting where I'm improvising rather than something where it's like, here's your notes and I want this like delivered perfectly.
Hmm.
And then with stand up, yeah, I kind of it's I used to, well, in the place I used to live, I used to have a stand up night that I used to run there, but now recently moved. Now I'm working things out again, and as I said, post pandemic, so I'm doing yeah, I'm doing a first show in a little while next week. And yeah, that we'll see how that goes. I'm definitely going to prepare for this more than I usually do, because I'm kind of like, how does this go? Does my old material even make sense now the pandemic's over? I don't know. So, but it's something which, you know, I do enjoy, and it's something which I actually find has a lot of overlap with the music world as well, as like the way of coming up with things, playing to your strengths, of trying new things, and all of that sort of thing. But it's, yeah, it's where most of my sort of time and energy goes into nowadays.
So with comedy, you were talking about just being prepared and stuff like that. I am really bad when you tell me, okay, do this way. I am horrible with that. But if you say, okay, this is what we want, just get it done. I'm great with
Yeah.
that because I'm really good like improv. I would be good at improv. I would not be good at like doing a full 1 hour stand up special because
Right.
I think I have a decent memory, but my order, I'm really bad at like sequence memory, sequential memory. So if
Right.
I have to tell a story, I am horrible. That's really my problem. I'm a horrible storyteller. And I think comedians are the best storytellers. Like if you, I guess if you go back to old times where humans were just sitting by fires, the people you want to be around is the comedians because they were great
Yeah.
storytellers and they could, you know, tell something over a length of time. So that's something that I find impressive. If stand up
It's
comedians who
true.
can do that kind of skill.
It's a, yeah, it's just when you mentioned that as well, I feel like we have a similar sort of connection and like how we look at this sort of thing. Because when I started stand-up comedy for the first time, like a lot of people, I was very much like, okay, I need to like script everything, work out where the pauses will be, work out, leave a little time for people to laugh at that bit, all of this presumptuous stuff you do, and then the first time you perform it, it's people are like, and you're just like, you're supposed to be laughing here. This, I'm just gonna, this pause does not work if you're not laughing.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, it was, and I remember right at the beginning, like I had this real sort of struggle because I was like, damn, I know I can be better at this than I'm being. And I'm getting really frustrated because like, I like, I'm throwing these scripts away. I'm like, okay, let's try something else. And I was living in Australia at the time, and like I was doing a lot of sets around Brisbane where there's a lot of like comedy every night of the week. And this one guy who ran one of the rooms there, who, he's a friendly guy, but he'd seen me sort of struggling a lot. And he kind of came up to me one time, and we didn't know each other very well, but he was like, you know, I think you've got some good things, but if you don't mind me saying, what I want you to do is for your next 10 sets, don't have anything prepared.
Mm.
Just go up there and do it. And I was like, um, okay. And so was like, well, it's not going particularly well now, so why not give it a shot? And this guy, he's got nothing to gain, so I don't have to do 10, but at least do the next one. And so I did the next set. I had nothing prepared. My like stress levels were like ridiculous. I had the anxiety beforehand, and it went not so well. I
Mm.
was like, okay, well, there were some moments, the moments which were good. I was like, huh, I don't usually get that sort of energy, but like most of it was too rambly, a bit like me now. Most of it was going into different directions and losing the audience, boring them. Second one I went up and did, and I killed it. It was amazing. It was like a short set. I went up, and it was just one of those things where right at the beginning, there was, yeah, it's actually a weird thing. I was like, there's a big glass panel, glass wall, like next to the stage that looked out into the street.
Mm.
And this like this little kid had decided to start like standing the other side of the wall. He's
Ah.
like 8 or 9 or whatever, and he's just doing all this little dancing, and he's pushing his face and all this sort of thing. And so I started just doing this whole kind of like, I was like hypothesizing on what this kid's life had been to bring him to this moment, and what struggles and difficulties he'd gone through. And like now he decided this his only way of expressing himself was outside this comedy show. I like, and like everyone's like loving it. I was enjoying this kind of improvised bit, and this kid could see everyone was laughing, so he thinks everyone's laughing at him. He's getting more excited, and it turned into, and then I just kind of went with it, and just like my brain relaxed, and I was able to be so much more in the moment. And what I took away from this, and what I kind of used for writing now a lot, is that what I'll do is I'll write something to the extent that I kind of, if you imagine like a bullet list of like, this is where we start, these are the things I want to touch on, this is like what I think could be funny, maybe there might be some like little things that I definitely want to make sure I include in there. Then I'll start performing it. First time it'll still be a bit wooden. I might forget the things. I might just realize as I'm doing it, I'm like, actually, the thing that I thought was interesting is not the thing that people find interesting.
Mm.
They like this bit. And then I'll be like, okay, so I'll expand this bit. This bit I'll have to cut because it doesn't work. And then while I'm doing all of this, I do try to write as little as possible, like physically write, because I find that if I physically write something, then it's cemented in my head,
Mm.
and then it becomes something that I'm ready to forget. And also I thought, well, this is a bit arrogant, but someone once said, it's like, if it's funny enough, you'll remember it. If it's good enough, it'll stick in there. So I started thinking, okay, what I need to do is basically have this, and get the audience, try things out, see how they react, build on it, get that, and eventually reach a point where you're like, hey, I've done this now the same way 3 times in a row. I've probably got this bit, you know. You have like little bits of it which, you know, if the audience find funny, you can do those a bit longer. You have little bits of it which, you know, you can speed up if it's not going well. And then it's just like this little thing where it's like, okay, now I have this bit of material like fleshed out enough that I can do it in lots of different situations. And if someone starts shouting at the back, I can, like, you know, deal with a heckler or whatever, and then still either get back to it. So so like with you, it's like as if I recognize this in myself, that I can't just write and just, you know, and have it like perfect and things like this. I've got to feel it. And that's working for me now, you know.
Yeah, and something that you were saying earlier about like the audience not reacting the way that they should, it makes me think about. Do you know who Joe Rogan is?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so like Joe Rogan does comedy, but he also commentates UFC fights, and yeah, he actually is like, I think he's maybe a brown or black belt in I think jujitsu or something, but that correlation between fighting and comedy is actually pretty similar because, as you were saying, um, somebody like if you're in a fight and you expect somebody to do a certain thing and they don't, it's going to throw you off. And that's the same way like comedy is. Like if you
Yeah.
are making this joke and nobody laughs, you're like, huh, what do I do next? They just
Right.
threw such a wrench in your system, in your process, that now you have to improv from there, even if it
Exactly.
was scripted. So that's something
Yeah.
I commend comedians on, because they're like boxers or fighters out there. They're just they have a certain scheme or setup that they're going with, but when things don't go right, they got to switch it up. They got to do something a little
Yeah.
different, and that's not easy.
Yeah, that is actually the thing which I find, especially when people are starting out, that people struggle with the most, you know, is because they have, yeah, there's naturally this fear that they have going into it. They're holding on, they're like, their set is their like crutch, you know. They're like, if everything just goes okay, goes according to plan, then I can get through this with my mediocre laughs that I expect from this sort of situation. But like as an audience member as well, like I always think you've got to keep thinking about things like an audience member. And I guess with the fight analogy, you've always got to think about things like from your opponent's point of view, is that, you know, it's like they aren't there to like see you dance.
Mm.
They aren't there to see a choreographed thing that's just gonna, they could watch on TV. They are there to be in that moment with you. Now, like, okay, the fight analogy doesn't work here, but but if like something happens in the room, like a glass breaks, someone's got a weird sounding laugh, someone someone heckles, or even just the fact that they laugh hard at a particular thing that's unusual, or say a comedian that was on earlier mentioned something, and now you mentioning something else makes people connect the two things, and they're like, haha. The moment you as an act sort of acknowledge the fact that something has happened right here, right now, that like is unique to this particular evening, this group of people, we're sharing something, it just, something electric happens.
Mm.
Like the whole room, it's like no longer is it just like some people performing, some people just trying things out, some people going through the motions. Now it's like this reminder that these are human beings, you're human beings, and anything can happen right here. Anything can happen, and anything should happen. And
That's like
yeah,
with
and
the kid,
that, sorry.
with the kid that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, yeah, with the kid. I mean, that's exactly it. And that I very easily could have just kind of gone, I'll just pretend he's not here, you know.
Yeah.
And then all the audience would be able thinking about would be that kid. All they would be thinking about is kind of like, here's this guy trying to make us laugh, and there's a kid just dancing, and he is clearly the alpha right now, you know, out of the two of them. And he's not even in the room, and this guy just can't even handle it. Yeah, just like, just interact with the kid, whatever, do some of your material every now and again, turn to the kid, what do you make of it, whatever it is, it's just something that makes it real. And yeah, and I think that's the difference between, say, a Netflix special and going to an actual comedy show.
And yet the live performance proponent of it is what I guess gives comedy or whatever you're doing, whether it's live music, um, it's just such a different feel. Like you're not just
Oh yeah.
hearing it. You're if you're just at home listening to music, or as you said, just watching something on Netflix. Like yeah, it's gonna be funny, but like if you're
Yeah.
actually there, and then if the comedian plays off of, again, like a glass breaking, or somebody laughing too hard at something, it's really funny. I actually was watching something on I think it was like a Facebook video or something like that, where this female comedian was talking about, she's like, yeah, one of my guy best friends says I look like some porn star, and then some guy was like, yep. Like he said it super loud. She was like, that was a little fat. And I mean, she probably carried on for like a solid minute or 2 minutes. She
Yeah.
carried on about how that guy said yep, like immediately after she had said that. Because it was funny
Yeah.
because he has to know who that porn star is. And so she played off of that. And those
That's
are the
it.
type of things that probably as a comedian you hope happens, because it adds more material so you don't run out of material. But then also
Yes. Yeah.
the audience is going to love it because they feel like they're in it too. Like now they're a part of
Yeah.
what's going on.
Yeah, that's it. And that's like a classic example of where it's like something where, like I can think of one where a guy talks about a pair of socks he has. There's a bit that I'm actually going to be doing next week, which is all hinged upon me being this kind of like, middle-aged white guy who's just like had an okay life. Just going on, quite boring, where I'm kind of going on about I won't give the full context, but it's about kind of like if imagine I'd had this other life where I all I knew was just doing cocaine off prostitutes' buttocks, and it's kind of it. The whole bit goes on for quite a long time, and it's the whole premise of it is this concept of how impractical it would be to live a life where you're spending so much time just doing cocaine off prostitutes' buttocks, and the expenses, the fact that the lack of hygiene, like what the prostitutes actually feel about the situation, whether it becomes awkward. Do you just mid conversation have to ask them to drop are they wearing trousers? I mean, I guess that they're prostitutes, but it's this whole thing where it's just like the core premise was like just something so simple, but it was another one of those ones where as soon as I kind of I was writing about something completely different, and then I realized there was this bit, and I was like, how stupid would it sound if I start going on about like cocaine and prostitutes and but like in a very sort of concerned dad type of way.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it's just one of those things now. I'm kind of like it's one of those moments, I guess, like that bit you were saying. It's like I know in my head now, I'm like, there's a lot, I can get a lot of material out of this. There's a lot of funny things this can go into, but out of the core concept of something that's just a complete cliche, that's
Yeah.
one sentence.
Yeah. All right, Stephen, we need to wrap this up. Please give everybody all the info you can about what you do. We could probably go on for forever, especially with music. I love talking about music with people. But yeah, just give everybody how they can either contact you or see all the stuff that you do, and
Yeah.
just fill them in.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm MA0SM on Facebook. You can see my #1 video, which has 3 million views now. It's a sketch, but still. There's Stephen Morgan Hero on Facebook. There's MA0SM on Instagram. Oh, it's so uncatchy. There's Flavadid on Twitter. MA0SM on TikTok. I do an interview series called Real Power Talk, where as a series of characters, I interview bands. The bands do not know that I'm a character, and it ends up in some ridiculous situations. Yeah, and I'm sure these will all be written down and clickable somewhere. But yeah, any of those things, and Easy Laughs in Amsterdam, Facebook, all those sorts of things. I don't know. You'll find something somewhere, or maybe not. We'll see.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. And again, it was definitely a pleasure. And are you going on Podmatch a lot?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for inviting me. I set up an account on Podmatch. I get messages, and it's a lot of fun. So I think, yeah, I'm looking at my list. I have another 6 lined up in the next couple of weeks.
Awesome. Well, I hope that definitely goes well for you. And I will definitely give you some good reviews, and hope everybody can reach out to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jackson.
Alrighty, well, thanks for everybody tuning in, and we'll see you next time.